Red Planet Audiobooks. We read you loud and clear.
Drive Shaft by Geoffrey Knight. Chapter 1. The Ducati roared around the corner, and the old Clyde looked up from his tinkering. At the same time, Moses, the gray-whiskered black Labrador at Clyde's feet, woke and lifted her head off her drool-shiny paws. Clyde glanced down at Moses with a look of resignation on his face, the fat cigar bobbing up and down as he muttered through clenched teeth, "New kids always trying to make a damn grand entrance." He slammed down the hood of the rusted Chevy he was working on and wiped his hands on the front of his coveralls as though it might make a difference to his permanently grease-stained palms. Then he watched as the gleaming red motorcycle turned gracefully into the drive of Clyde's Auto Repair and Body Shop, the bike's roar sliding into a low, powerful purr as it braked beside the Chevy. Clyde gave an unimpressed sigh and plucked the fat cigar from his mouth with his fat, grease-blackened fingers. Well, must be Jensen. Welcome to Southern California." The Ducati's rider kicked the stand, spread his legs, cut the engine, then lifted his matching red helmet to reveal brown skin, hazel eyes, a bright cocksure smile, and a head full of wild blonde hair, matted and wet from the heat of the day. He pulled off his gloves and swung one leg wide over the back of the bike, then rested the helmet and gloves on the seat and beamed at Clyde with one hand extended. "Pleased to meet you, sir." His accent was Southern, Texan. He shook Clyde's hand, not minding the grime. "I'm Clyde, and this here is Moses," Clyde said, thumbing toward the dog at his feet. "You treat her the same as you treat your mama." "I love animals," the young man nodded. He bent to pat the lab, but Clyde stopped him. "Don't touch her till she gets to know you. She's blind as a bat. You'll scare the shit out of her. Diabetes." "Sorry, sir." Then, with a kink in his brow, "She? I thought you said her name was Moses." "It is. Whoever said Moses was a man. Wouldn't be the first thing the Bible got wrong." "I guess not." "Shut up. You're late. I was expecting you yesterday." "Sorry about that. I hit a storm in New Mexico in the middle of the desert. Decided to find me a motel for the night. Better safe than sorry." "Ain't you heard of a telephone? You could have damn called." "I'm sorry, sir. I'm trying to save money. Which reminds me, thanks again for the opportunity. I can't repay you enough. I had to get out of Texas. My stepfather, well, we don't particularly see eye to eye." "Don't thank me yet. If you ain't capable of pulling your weight, you're out on the street. Understood?" "Yes, sir." Jensen beamed enthusiastically. "And stop calling me sir," Clyde grumbled. "Sorry." "And Jesus H. Christ, stop apologizing." Jensen went to say something, but realized he'd run out of words. Instead, he bit his tongue and peeled off his leather jacket, dressed in his white t-shirt, jeans, and boots now. For a 20-year-old kid, he looked built. He was certainly fit enough to do a hard day's work. Clyde puffed on his cigar. "Show me your hands." Like an obedient schoolboy, Jensen held his hands out. Palms down, palms up. And while his hands weren't nearly as filthy as Clyde's when he was Jensen's age, there was no denying the evidence, the oil and grime under the nails, the old scars and new lacerations from slipped wrenches and crowbars, the fine swirls and grooves of his fingerprints forever blackened with grease. "Hey, Hutch!" Clyde shouted off to one side while still inspecting Jensen's hands. Jensen looked around the repair shop, wondering who Clyde was shouting to, but saw no signs of life. This registered with Clyde as well, so he barked even louder. "Hutch!" When there was still no response, Clyde turned and walked through the opened roller doors into the shop, followed by blind old Moses, who was followed by eager young Jensen. There were car panels and body parts everywhere, some bent and buckled, others brand new and ready for replacement. There were two cars raised 5 foot off the ground on hydraulic lifts, a Buick and an old Citroen, their exteriors stripped bare and the engines lying in pieces on the black, slicked cement floor. There were rivets and screws and spark plugs and tools strewn across workbenches. In one corner was a leaning tower of tires, somehow defying gravity. In another corner was a junk heap of busted headlamps, empty gasoline drums, and old winch coils. And right toward the back of the shop, past a curtain of old hanging chains of different lengths and sizes, was a beat-up Pontiac with a pair of legs protruding out from underneath it. The legs were dressed in filthy, oversized coveralls and spread wide, revealing an old wooden mechanic's dolly beneath whoever was under the car. "Hutch!" Clyde yelled again. Still no response. Clyde kicked one of those widespread legs, and finally they flinched, followed by the heavy thunk of a head against metal. "Fuck, Clyde! Jesus!" The words echoed out from under the car. Jensen was half expecting another version of Clyde to roll out from under the car, greasy, sweaty, old, and overweight, and although the man who slid out on the dolly was indeed greasy and sweaty, he was far from old and overweight. Hutch was young, perhaps in his mid-20s, with short black hair, shiny and spiked by perspiration. He palmed his forehead now, checking for blood from the bump he'd just received, squinting in pain, shooting a furious look at Clyde every few seconds with angry ice-blue eyes. His stubble was black and thick, perhaps 4 days old, maybe 5, and he had stripped off the coveralls right down to his waist, no, below the waist, revealing a body that was buff and strong, covered in sparse black hair that lightly forested his large chest, then trickled all the way down his rigid stomach to the thatch of pubic hair now on display in a blasé sort of way at the base of his coveralls zipper. "What the fuck are you staring at?" The man's angry gaze had turned from Clyde to Jensen. Jensen blinked and snapped his eyes away from the young mechanic's lower abs. "Shit, I'm sorry." Clyde rolled his eyes and said to the man lying on his back, "Ignore him, he seems to do that a lot. Apologize, that is." "What?" the young mechanic shouted. Only then did Jensen notice the white cord running from the pocket of the man's coveralls leading up to earplugs. The young mechanic plucked them out and Jensen caught the muffled blare of 70s rock. Clyde pulled the cigar from his chops for the formalities. "Hutch, meet Jensen Rivers. Jensen, meet Dean Hutchinson." Jensen leaned down and extended his hand. "Pleased to meet you." Hutch sat up effortlessly, his abs rippling as he did so, but ignored the hand. "I thought you said we didn't need anyone else," he said to Clyde. "Now, Hutch, be nice. He's family." "You said I was the only family you needed." Hutch was still dabbing his fingers against the bump that was rising on his forehead. "You ain't family. You're more like a stray dog who wandered in and decided to stay. And a grease-covered one at that." "You saying I'm like some mangy mutt?" "No, I'm saying he's my brother-in-law's son," Clyde said with a defenseless shrug, pointing to Jensen. "The kid needed a break." "Actually, I'm your sister-in-law's nephew. Oh, but it's a big family. Confusing, lots of cousins and nephews. I don't really get along with them anyway. Black sheep, I guess. I'm here to work, right?" "Then what the hell are you doing standing there jabbering?" Hutch said. "We need a rear panel ordered for the old Buick over there." "As well as a replacement tail light," added Clyde. "The tires need restacking." "Actually, you can move them to the yard out back." "The Maverick needs its radiator replaced." "And the Chevy needs a new head gasket." "There's an inventory list in the filing cabinet over by the workbench, if you can get the drawer open." "And a list of all the best wreckers in town in the office, somewhere." "Which needs cleaning," Hutch added. For a moment,